Name is Travis Taylor. I work with the Ohio Department of Education. Particular office at the department is Office of Graduate Success, which kind of speaks for itself. There's about 8 of us. Our main role at the department is providing students, focusing on prepping them post-high school. My particular role within the office is graduation requirements. We can touch on that a little bit here, but also support or work with high school redesign, which is how I'm connected with Johns Hopkins. There's a couple of colleagues at our department that work with Johns Hopkins on high school redesign. So today I'm going to walk through Ohio's high school redesign, how we collaborate with other partners in this work, what it looks like, kind of the history of the work, but to kind of level set that. First, I'm going to kind of do some engagement here. Raise your hand if you're from kind of a K-12 setting organization. 1, 2, 3. All right. How about higher ed? Nonprofit? Perfect. Okay, we've got a pretty good balance here. Previous to the Department of Education, I was nonprofit, and I was happy this morning when I walked in and sat at the table, and one of the ladies had a B on her shirt for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and that's where I worked prior to the Department of Education in 6 years. At Big Brothers Big Sisters was kind of tied into this work. Very good. So, reframing high school redesign in Ohio. Around 6 or so years ago, it was looked at through the department is how can we support our students in their high school experience so they kind of evolve their high school experience there. Think about when you were back in high school. Did you feel like you were the driver of your high school experience, or were you a passenger? The driving the car was teachers, educators, parents, family. They were kind of giving you that information, the resources, but you weren't really driving your 4-year experience with what you wanted to do. So with this shift, with stakeholders that are made up from superintendents, teachers, school counselors, parents, some students, they wanted to reshift what the high school experience in 4 years for students in Ohio would look like. They gave 4 recommendations. Some of those were discussed today. We'll walk through what those 4 are, but the main conversation is going to sit with what my particular role is at the department between graduation and supporting high school redesign, and how we began evolving over the last couple of years, incorporating other partners to help support this work. Because the main thing is we wanted to give students the platform to create their high school experience, what they valued, what their strengths were, give those high schools the opportunity to give those students the support while they're in those 4 years preparing to post-high school. That way that student, it's no longer, hey, you're 4 years, here's your diploma, congratulations, pat on the back, you're on your way. How do we support that student so when they receive that diploma, they're ready for that next step? They're not stuck on that stepping stone, and they have another stepping stone to go towards. So the 4 recommendations, the top one, the most important one, from Johns Hopkins, they have the high school redesign framework already built. They have that pilot. The last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to join them in the work and meet with other schools that they support throughout the state or out the country. Some of those are New York, Louisiana, Massachusetts. Ohio is part of that as well. But hear from them, which we did. We took that recommendation. We partnered with them now for, I know it was prior to when I started, 5-6 years now to help with that work. The 2 I'm going to discuss there are ones that are highlighted. Leveraging framework network. I'll walk through what that is. But in the state of Ohio, we have people throughout the state to support local schools. They're called ESCs, Educational Service Centers, built in to support local regions, providing resources and materials to do that. So I kind of walk through how we incorporated that collaboration and network to support our redesign work. This all ties into that graduation requirement element. Students in Ohio this year are graduating under new requirements. First cohort, graduating in a couple weeks. This has been a nice retreat for me the last couple days getting away because they're getting a ton of questions, being the main point person at the department on graduation. Students graduate these requirements, and I am dipping out on a quick little bit. So don't tell anybody where I'm at. With time, a quick overview of what that looks like in the last one is identify and cultivate promising practices and innovation. So those are the 4 recommendations that we learned from this stakeholder group, this task force, to help us shift that model and help move students from the passenger seat to the driver's seat through their educational experience. So the first one, I'm going to briefly walk through because I don't want to bore you with all the different pathways for graduation requirements in Ohio because it is quite extensive, it takes quite a bit, and it keeps me employed, so I'm glad it's quite a bit. But there are 3 portions of graduation requirements. The first one is your standard credits. Every student in the state of Ohio has to earn a set amount of credits. Second portion, demonstration and competency. This is where we're going to spend a decent amount of time in the presentation to talk kind of level set of what that is and where the students now have the flexibility for creating their own pathway for graduation. The last one, probably the most attractive one that gets the most notice on graduation requirement, the students have the ability to earn seals in the state of Ohio. That's what that demonstration of readiness is. These seals can take in coursework testing, but it can also take into account the students' extracurricular activities. If they're participating in a sport, if they're in band, if they're in the fine arts, if they're doing community service. There's one that's also about mentorship. So there's different opportunities for students to earn those. You can see plus signs between those. That's to show the students, every student has to meet all three of these categories. The reason why I wanted to clearing that up is because this is the demonstration of competency. You don't feel like you have to understand this, but I want to provide some context of why I'm talking about this. Every student has to take a certain amount of tests. Our previous graduation requirements, they were funneled students to say, hey, this is your way to graduate by. Hey, you got to take X amount of tests and score X amount of points. You got to take 7 state tests and earn 18 total points. That may be a great pathway for some students, but students where test taking may not be their strong suit. What are we going to do to support those students? So this is where students will take a certain amount of tests, but they have 4 options. Some of these are applicable to some students, college credit plus, military enlistment, ACT, SAT. You can see there's still some tests and coursework after that. But the one where this is where the framework changed, and where we hear a lot of our schools that are supporting high school redesign, or even outside of high school redesign, are focusing on, is that career readiness aspect that you've probably heard pathways throughout the conversation today, collaboration, how you're going to get connected with community partners. This is where this sits. And I'm not going to, again, walk through everything, but I just want to highlight a couple of these options students have. The second bullet there is probably our most popular pathway that we're working to support students in, is that's that industry recognized credential. There's hundreds of credential students in Ohio can earn. There's 16 different career fields that make up of medical, business, transportation, agriculture, and there's credentials with pathways that students have to earn. This allows students to get the interest of seeing what they want in high school. I always use an example. Let's say a student wants to go into the medical field. There's an opportunity for them to get involved in the STNA credential. By doing so, fantastic, use that before graduation, or you can just take that. Students, what my colleague and I always say when we do presentations, we would love every student to identify one of the alternative pathways here. Even if they're not going to use it for graduation, but they get exposure and experience in that field. For STNA, we use the example. Let's say a student in the medical field want to go to that. They're putting all their eggs in the basket for the medical field. They start doing an STNA credential, like, oh, I do not like blood. I don't want to work around blood. That's fantastic that that student learned that in high school or before they started investing their time in post-secondary education to go to the medical field. So it gets them that exposure and that experience while they're in high school to test different things out. Big thing is there is making sure that we have the exit and on ramp to make sure that, okay, you realize you didn't like this, how can we support you? What do you want to do moving forward with your high school experience? Also, you see pre-apprenticeship program there, students. This is where that collaboration with the regional networks ties in, is for help support them to get involved in the community, either businesses, organizations that have that opportunity for students to get outside the classroom, get outside of the school, and use the pre-apprenticeship for their one of the pathways to graduation. Also, you notice on the right, 250 hours work-based learning. Again, the big thing I want to highlight here is either students have the opportunity to earn some of these within the school setting, or exposure for them to move outside the school setting and allowing the schools to have that flexibility for that. Second portion is leveraging the ESCs. That's a lot of work and information right there to funnel through the department. So how we leverage between high school redesign and our ESC partners. We are currently starting off gently cohort 3 of high school redesign. The first cohort of high school redesign began this year of COVID. So it started off really well, coming through it all, kind of wrenching it, and started out on a different path. Cohort 2, we just wrapped up the first year. We had an information session on Monday for cohort 3. We're starting to get different interests and likes. But one of the reasons why we're bringing in the educational service centers there, one, to get to know the schools in their community, to recruit them and communicate about the opportunity to involve in high school redesign and help support those schools with what they have available in their community. So a little breakdown of the educational service centers in Ohio. You can see the lovely map of the state of Ohio color-coded there. There's a total of 16 regions in the state of Ohio. You won't see those 16 on here. But within those is where the ESCs sit. There's a total of 51 different ESCs that support every school within a region in the state of Ohio. How they can support their schools is kind of based upon the relationship that they have with their school that they're supporting, particularly around high school redesign. Some of it is resource development, professional development, support, but basically they're within that school to help them build that out and plan it. Kind of this, did not think this was going to be a click-through here, so I apologize for that. This one I kind of put together. This is probably a new one for Lyndon to see, so correct me if you're like, this does not make sense at all, is it? So there's kind of this phases of how it begins with the ESCs to get connected with their schools. The first one is just that connection. A lot of these ESCs already know their schools within their district and their region. They already have reports at different conferences, meetings, or they're already within their schools, so there's kind of that relationship. But in terms of the high school redesign work, the big aspect is building that connection, building that relationship, getting the ESCs within the school, sitting with the school, their high school redesign team to incorporate what they want to do moving forward. So through that is identifying schools, identify relationships, who you're going to work with, and start cultivating those relationships. After you kind of establish that, then it becomes planning. What does that high school want to do? Obviously, high schools, K-12, they have large ideas. They want to be creative, provide their students with opportunities, but they also have hundreds of other priorities that they're dealing with, and things that just come up on a day-to-day basis that they didn't anticipate. So those dreams and those aspirations at times are difficult to pull out, and they may not have the time. The ESC, that ESC is to help them in this area of like, hey, let's schedule time. Let's bring this about. Come to our ESC office, your high school redesign team, to help implement this, and let's brainstorm these ideas. So there's many different seats and aspects that these ESCs can work with, but that second portion of the relationship and that collaboration with them is just being there to system what that school needs. What one school needs may not be the same as another. So we don't put like a list of like, here's all the things that you have to list, do, timeline on the aspects of it. So the second one is just engagement. Lastly, kind of once you have that relationship and kind of mapping out, how can we support you moving forward? Make sure that we're motivating you. Obviously, there's different times throughout the school year. The high school redesign team of a particular school may have different priorities, motivation in the school years coming up, graduation, testing. How can we keep you guys on track and hold you accountable for as doing so as a partner? And last one, just keep the work moving forward. Our cohort 2 just wrapped up their first year, but they're starting to think about next year, start planning out. We really want those ESCs to be a part of those conversations for that. So quick just breakdown, as I alluded to, cohort 1, 5 schools. It got kind of turned upside down with the pandemic. Some of the relationships with some of the schools maintained after that first year. The first year of cohort 1 is not one that we highlight very much, but we learn from it. We still have opportunities to learn from them. We're still connected with some of the schools. Cohort 2, we had 4 schools. Majority of those schools are up in northeastern Ohio, the Cleveland area. We have one down in Cincinnati. First year that we partnered with the ESC to support those schools. We learned a lot this year, both good and bad, but we learned a lot of opportunities to grow that and enhance that. And started to get more leaders of ESCs throughout the state interested in getting involved in the work. Then ongoing support. So the future of high school redesign, we really want to scale this up in the state of Ohio and tie it back to the state court feedback. Under these new graduation requirements, there's a lot of flexibility that students have. And walking through high school redesign and having these schools have the opportunity to kind of brainstorm and kind of implement some of these changes is a great opportunity, and we want to provide that opportunity for more schools within the state. Beginning of this school year, as we alluded to, cohort 3. We're not putting a number on how many schools that we have. We got a good amount of interest from our information session on Monday, but as we're scaling this up, we don't want to move it too big. We want to keep that connection with those schools and ESCs moving forward. So with that, this is one of our schools, one of my favorites. They're fantastic. They are the aviators, so they just don't wear those goggles around just for fun. But I wanted to highlight this is the top right up there, Amy. She's one of the ESC partners. And I don't know if they did it intentional or not, but when I saw this slide, it resonated with me that she's not in her school, she's not working with them day to day, but they view her as part of the team because she is. So I just really wanted to highlight that, see these friendly faces. They probably won't be as happy that I shared that externally with people, but that's perfectly fine. The goal is, and Linda and I spoke about this, we really wanted the next year is to bring one of the schools here to talk about their experience. I can kind of share some highlights, but nothing better than people that have the boots on the ground doing the work and hear about their personal experience, what they're working on. But I did pull two slides from them of what they wanted to work on and what they're moving forward with. So this year, they surveyed their students. One of the pillars of high school redesign is student voice, and really incorporating those students. What the students wanted, they wanted more flexibility, freedom, trust, personalization, things that we've talked about today and that are super important for students to have. Again, not to say it again too often, but students need to be the drivers of their high school experience. And to kind of highlight one of the things that I heard from a parent while doing the presentation is there's a ton of options for students in the state of Ohio to graduate. I love the fact that even though it's a lot, my student in a sense has a buffet of options for them to do in high school. That it's not like, here's your high school experience, here's 4 years, go on your way. Like, what are you interested in? What do you have experience in or strengths in? Let's align that to what you want to do in those 4 years. And if it switches and changes, that's perfectly fine. And I think that represents what Sycamore High School is looking at here is really talking about what the students want, what their opportunities are, making sure that they're providing that for the students. And it may not be an easy shift. Anytime you make changes, a small change, move the boat a little bit and you start getting momentum there moving forward. But through the student voice, some of the aspects that they're looking to work on is increasing open campus opportunities, getting students on campus, external campus, beginning to highlight the industry credentials of pre-apprenticeship. They really want to provide the students opportunities to get off campus if they have exposure, while also using that time towards graduation requirements. Expanding course types, provide opportunities for students to, if they're interested in a certain topic or course, make sure the students have that opportunity within their school. Next one is, again, opening up access to all courses. The last one just kind of focus on is school within school option. A lot of these industry credentials, students may not currently be able to earn those, most likely not at their school setting. They have to go to Career Center or other opportunity within the region. Working with the ESC of what options can we bring in-house, what partners can we bring in that region so your students don't have to leave the campus. They can do it in-house, learn, and create industry credentials or opportunities in-house that are attractive for jobs in their region. So that students, when they graduate, if they're not going on post-secondary, they can go right into the workforce and they already have a relationship there. So that's the last thing I wanted to kind of highlight on. And just leave you with this note. I mentor a student who's in 9th grade I kind of test out a little bit with graduation in the sense like, oh, what did you talk about your school counselor with? What are you working towards? And that kind of stuff, just hearing what his experience in the high school is. He comes from a difficult background. Both his parents are deceased. Never seen anybody in his family graduate. His grades are not that strong. Education has never been a highlight for him. He recently met with the school counselor to walk through graduation requirements, what opportunities are for him. He loves semis. I don't know anything about semis. He's talking to me, I see semis all the time. Like, all I know is they're big, and when I was a kid, I went like this, and they hauled down. Beyond that, I have no clue. At the Career Center that is by his house, they had diesel mechanic school. When he learned about that, light bulb went on. He took a field trip there, he walked around, he was sending me pictures with all the technology, all the equipment they had there. He started seeing his vision, what high school can be for him, but more importantly, what post-high school can be for him to have a career that he has interest in and aligns with, and he can break that barrier of kind of where his family has been in the past. So I just feel like under these new graduation requirements, with the work with high school redesign, shifting that focus in Ohio to provide students opportunities that align with what their interests are is a huge asset for us, and they're looking forward to expanding within the state of Ohio. So that is all I have. I don't know if we want to do questions now or just wait till the end.
Is it okay if we wait to the end, just because our time has been wonky and other?
Yeah.
Is that okay with you guys? Thanks.
That 22 minutes, pretty much right on.
That was awesome. Can I make one sentence about all that you shared? Is it all right?
Yeah.
There's 3 sentences. Really cool in Ohio, they have credit flexibility.
Yeah.
So, and they tell the schools all the time, you decide what's credit. We don't decide what's a credit. You decide, right? So they're very supportive and encouraging.
Yeah.
And the idea of the ESCs, which would be like your intermediate units or BOCES or anything like that, right? The idea that they have is they are very present, the state, right? The whole idea of this is to have the district, the school, and the state in the same place at the same time so that you can go from a fast no to a slow maybe for anything that the school or the kids want to do, right? Like that's the model if you really want to know what it is, right? And that's, their whole structure is built to support that. How do we get to yes? That's our job.
That was a lot more than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
No, we are,
Fair, it's fair.
we're lucky in Ohio, we have, it's a local control state, and local school districts have a lot of autonomy to change and make their schedules and credits flexible to what their students are. From the state of Ohio, we are very supportive of this redesign work. Obviously, we came up with the redesign model for graduation and what the schools should do in the state. So a lot of times we're excited. A lot of ODE steps into the room, we are compliant. Yes, no, this is why you can't do it. With this, we have a lot of support within the department to Linda said is we don't have to say no. It may be no right now, but we're going to work in line with you to how we can change that to yes and support your students.